Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, welcome back everybody. Before we go around and say our names, is there anyone here for the first time? Then welcome back. I'm Jim.
My name is Stephen. I'm Terrence.
I'm Mick.
Jack.
I'm Larry. Tom.
Yes. Leandro.
My name is Jerry.
I'm David.
I'm Ed.
My name is Marvin.
I'm Bob.
Jim.
Jay. Don. Juan. Kevin. Peter.
I'm Brad.
Kim.
I'm Susan.
And this is David Richo.
I'm
Dave. Two friends.
Okay, so I'm for Dan.
Will.
Well, sorry.
No way.
And here comes Lee. Dave Richo has a doctorate in psychology. Do you describe yourself as a Jungian?
Yes.
Yes. He has a practice in San Francisco and in Santa Barbara. He's written a number of books. This most recent book is How to Be an Adult in a Relationship, is that correct? And it's always a delight to have you here, so welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Well, this past year was my 50th anniversary as a psychotherapist. So I figured out I've seen about maybe 5,000 clients. And I asked myself this question. What was the most common problem that you had to work with? And the answer came without thinking. Staying too long in what doesn't work. And that applies to me too. So I thought to myself, well, this is a really good topic to bring up and to kind of work on together and to see how Buddhist teachings fit in. So staying too long in what doesn't work means I remain in something, such as a relationship or a job, that no longer fits with who I am now, or no longer fulfills my needs, or I notice that I'm giving more and more and getting less and less. And all of these show that the time has come to look directly at what's happening and see if some kind of change can be made. And if a change can't be made, then to move on to whatever the next chapter in your life might be. I'm thinking of an example from nature, which I could maybe use this poem by Emily Dickinson to explain. She certainly noticed that in New England, when winter was coming in, some birds migrated and others stayed put. For instance, the ruby-throated hummingbird flies off to Mexico before the frost hits, whereas the sparrows stay for the whole winter. And believe me, it's a rough winter. So this is her poem. The southern custom of the bird that ere the frosts are due accepts a better latitude. We are the birds that stay. The shiverers round farmers' doors, for whose reluctant crumb we stipulate, till pitying snows persuade our feathers home. So, we are the birds that stay, no matter how bad things have gotten. And when the environment has told us that it isn't really working anymore to be here, instead, we stand outside the Yankee farmers' doors begging for a crumb to keep ourselves alive, until the snow itself reminds us that it isn't really working. So this tendency to stay put, I tried to look into it carefully, and I came up with 3 possibilities that help us understand our motivation when this happens to us. And of course, when it happens, it could go on for years. The first possibility is the fear of change. The fear that if I leave this relationship, I'll be facing a whole new life that might have loneliness in it. There's something comforting about being here, even though it's not working, and I'm scared by the possibility of letting that go. Imagine having the fear of a new chapter when our entire body-mind is oriented toward journey, which has something to do with moving from one place to the other. So here we are repressing or contradicting a natural impulse which is in us that tells us you've got to keep moving on. You can't stay stuck. And of course, all of nature is doing the same thing. Instead of, in nature, it's not called a journey, it's called evolution. Nothing is staying the same. Everything is continually moving through cycles. That there's something in us that could fear such a move. I remember a song that had the lyrics, I know I can't stay, but I just can't go. So that's the first option. The second one is one that's very familiar to me. It's the belief that the purpose of life is to endure rather than to be happy.
Could you repeat that, please?
The purpose of life is to endure rather than to be happy. So as long as I can put up with this, that makes my life successful. And I'm acting in accord with some inner belief system that tells me your purpose is to put up with your life and deal with it rather than, as another poem says, mold it nearer to the heart's desire. So the Buddhist teaching of impermanence hasn't really penetrated because we're contradicting the idea of impermanence when we just keep everything the same. or believe that it can be kept the same. Actually, it isn't staying the same because systems inside ourselves of creativity and of evolutionary drive are folding, are closing up because we're not activating the parts of ourselves that are oriented toward movement, only the part that is oriented toward immobility, silence, instead of song. The third option is something positive. It's that somewhere inside we believe that there's more to gain, more to learn, that there's something stirring inside that is helping us grow. And if we stay long enough, it will flourish and bloom, and we will become healthier and move more into wholeness. Now that also is a belief. It may not really be what's happening. We remember Shakespeare in Julius Caesar. This is Brutus speaking. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is lost in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current as it serves, or lose our ventures. That quote leads us to the most mysterious part of our topic, which is inner timing, because you can't go until the timing chain kicks in and lets you go. And I've seen this over and over again, and I am totally flummoxed by what it's about. But over and over again, I've seen that no matter what I might say in the course of therapy, a person just can't make the move until he or she is ready. So there's a mysterious readiness that you can't delay and you can't force to happen. Once it kicks in, as in the quote, there's a tide. Once it kicks in, you have to go. And if you say no then to going, you really fall into a kind of despair. This other poem by Emily Dickinson fits. A great hope fell. You heard no noise. The ruin was within. Oh, cunning wreck that told no tale and let no witness in. A not admitting of the wound until it grew so wide that all my life had entered it and there was room beside. So that would be a horrible fate, that you were ready and you kind of held back. And that's the great hope fell. Internally, it's kind of hard to recover from that situation. So, the Buddhist teaching that suffering is a part of life was not meant to make us believe that putting up with suffering is a good choice or a spiritual choice. And the idea of the impermanence is certainly one that we're not respecting when we think everything should remain the same. And the third feature of our conditioned existence in Buddhist teaching is that there is no separate self, that what we call a self is actually infinitely connected with all other beings. So when I say I'm afraid to go because I might be lonely, we are disregarding that possibility. So now we've looked at the issue, possible motivations, and the mystery of timing, which makes the move possible. So let's open it up for comments, questions, or discussion so we can keep unpacking this intriguing topic. Any ideas? Or am I the only one this happened to? Yeah.
Do you think the opposite is frequently true, where people can't decide to do one particular course of action? They keep flitting from thing to thing to thing.
Flitting from one thing to the other.
Forever.
Yes.
That's another.
Yeah, that's a good point. That would be the opposite of this.
You repeat what you said.
That some people flit from one person to another
Yeah.
instead of
Well,
staying
I think
put.
so.
There's a wonderful Chinese concept called Wu Wei, effortless effort. And like if your body's surfing, if you swim too soon, the wave will crash on top of you. If you swim too late, you will miss the ride. But if your timing is right, with one stroke, you can catch a free ride all the way in.
Good analogy.
Well, for me, the mystery of timing really hits home in my acceptance of myself as a gay man. It's good for me to understand that about life because it took me so long, and I would go back and say, why did I wait so long to come into this truth about myself? And then the reality is that I made that move, I made that decision, I had that acceptance when I was ready. And I'm joyful for that acceptance.
So we never regret that it took what it took, as they say in 12-step programs, it takes what it takes. We never regret how long it took, as long as when we were ready, we did make the move. I guess the readiness has to do with the synchronicity, the blending, the coming together of enough inner resources so that we can handle what comes next. Tim?
I wonder how much of it, how age plays a factor. When I look at my own life, I was much bolder, took bigger chances and changes than I feel comfortable taking on now. The energy resources aren't the same in a sense.
It's a very good point. It is age-related for most of us. We're less likely to reinvent ourselves as we get older. But it is still possible. Grandma Moses, she started painting at age 80. Started a whole new chapter. Yeah.
I felt something quite the opposite of what Tim just said. I recently read an article about why older people generally speaking, tend to be happier than younger people because younger people see that the weight of every decision that they make has an impact going very far into their future if they predict themselves to live a long life, whereas the future for older people is a lot shorter, and we recognize that, and we're comfortable with that, and we say, well, you know, I've only got a little bit more to go, so I might as well enjoy it while I've got it.
Okay, thank you. Susan?
In the fall, I heard you give a similar talk on Monday night, partially, and I just wanted to tell you that I gave notice for a job a few weeks later, and it all worked out. I mean, I was really stressed because I was working for a friend. It was a part-time thing, but it was supposed to I was supposed to do it for about a year in my mind, and it ended up being 5. But anyway, just thought I would share that.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah.
That was it's that trying to find that nuance, like with my work, of how much change, how much things I could make different that would theoretically lead to something really perhaps wonderful, that integrating with who I really am and where this profession really is, and like make something completely new or that might be needed and enrich my life and the people I work with, versus, you know, I did this job because my father told me, you know, I should become a doctor. You know, and there was this, and maybe I should go to spend more time with music in the next 20 years. So I'm always looking at that, what positive thing I'm getting from something. But I do a lot of enduring, and you know, it's, I'm sure money plays part of it too. But it's you know, it's that. So I think all those factors that you mentioned are playing a role, but it's how much I could change. I think that's the challenge, how much I could change.
Yeah, and that would have a lot to do with the readiness, where the changes would be made. By the way, the endure is from the Latin word that means harden, as in indurate. It's not endure as in duration. It's hardened. So it's kind of arteries harden when we keep enduring. We weren't meant to keep enduring. We were meant to endure just long enough so a change can happen. And then enjoy. Then endure again. Then enjoy. It's supposed to be like that. This body-mind is not meant to just keep enduring for a whole lifetime. It's going to wreak havoc with our health. Did you have a question? Oh, Peter.
Just another, years ago I was in a relationship that, as it went on, was working less and less, and I didn't know how to leave it. And suddenly the relationship person was murdered. And my response to that was very mixed. Because it was like the universe was helping me out, was one way of looking at it.
Don't mess with that.
I mean, it was, like so I say, the outside events sometimes precipitate or help move someone along.
Well, let's hope it doesn't have to be like that for the rest of us. But yes, you're right. It can. Sometimes what somebody else says or does helps us make the move. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but I also wonder if that's changed over the decades a little bit, because if anything, now we're in a nomadic generation and people cut and leave quick. And the challenge is actually to stay, and to see what's to be learned in jobs and relationships and housing even. I mean, like 50s, 60s, people would stay in their job and get to watch a retirement. And that's not where we're at these days. So I was wondering if you've noticed, if you've had...
I have noticed with the me generation and the present generation, I see less of this. Yeah. It's more like people of our age or generation behind us. Yeah.
I wonder if I missed it. I remember from earlier talks here from a long time ago that one lesson was that the essence of life is flow, and flow means change. And I'm wondering whether it can be good, or maybe you were implying this, that rather than making a change happen, allowing the change to happen, allowing the circumstances to arise, and suddenly get that gut feeling that might be good, and following that gut feeling, which is not making it happen, but allowing it to happen.
I like that, yeah.
And it certainly happened with my life when chances for careers that I thought I wanted just didn't happen. And then suddenly, by accident, seemingly, someone said something to me, and what I thought I was going to do suddenly got changed, and I hit the best career I could ever have hoped for, and stayed there for over 10 years.
Good for you. So that was a catalyst.
But I didn't make it happen.
No, but you were ready for it. Yeah, great. Yeah, I think the readiness fits better with the flow idea than the forcing yourself to do something. Juan?
Yeah. So I have a question about the beginning of the talk, of your talk,
Yeah.
which is that, well, you started by saying that one of the things that you've noticed the most in your patients was that this staying whenever things are not working out, and I can totally relate to that. However, in my life, I noticed that the staying is more mental than circumstantial, in the sense that it's not the actual job, or it's not the actual relationship, but it's the way that I am used to relate to that. So I'm just wondering, because you use those examples, whether you really think that was kind of like the most common change that folks needed, rather than the way they relate to those circumstances around them.
Rather than what?
The circumstances themselves, right?
Oh yeah, sometimes the circumstances were so impactful that it made it understandable that they weren't moving. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we can make room for that.
So if I look at relationships in my life, I think the change that needed to be made primarily was internal rather than changing partners. I was very good at changing partners. The challenge was to stay put and work with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important option. That we all have. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your experience. The three aspects, fear, enduring bad situations, and readiness, has to do with basically your cultural background and, in the end of the day, your family, the place where you come from. So as a gay man, okay, you face the fear, great. Now I feel like I learn with that fear, I get stronger, I accept myself. And then you go to the second, okay, I don't have to endure situations where I'm inside the closet, or I feel disrespected by and then the readiness kick in and you make the move. And then I feel like I've done the three.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, and then your life changes. Your life gets better. Okay, I'm a whole person. I'm successful. I can accept myself. But then the group you come from, your family, they are still in the same place. So after you go to 1, 2, 3, and you see the people you love, you see that dynamic and suffering and making the whole getting bigger because they never decide to promote any change. I feel almost guilty for going through the process. Okay, I'm in a different place, but I see the loved ones suffering and enduring, and like what to do with that. Like there's no way to delay or to promote the redness or the change with the loved one. So what's your experience in that? When someone went through the 1, 2, 3, but it's still there's a sense of guilty for doing that.
Yes.
What's that? What's your opinion about that?
Well, first of all, I think you're bringing up something so tender and beautiful about us humans, that we care about the people around us and how the decisions we make might impact on them. Right. Instead of just, well, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to do it. We think we're careful about their sensitivities, and I think we should really honor that. So I think we should take that into account, and it might mean that we're staying a little longer in something, but it can't be so long that it starts to debit away from our life journey. So it's really a difficult strait to navigate, because I want to be kind to others and I want to be kind to myself. But I like keeping it in mind as part of how I make the decision. Am I answering in accord with what you...
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're
I was going to say something, but I'm going to make 2 comments, because when I heard Andrew say that in your response, I feel as if I could say on a daily basis that I'm constantly compromising myself, I'll say it like that, as a gay person, for the sensitivities, to be sensitive to all the others in the world, in society, my family, my friends, and not so much now, but certainly as a other person. And so, where is that moment, where's that spot where you say, this is who I am, and I know that you don't want me to marry a man, but that's what's going to happen, and that's what those sorts of things. So I just kind of wanted to bring that into that conversation.
Yeah.
So that put a little discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no real total answer to it. It's like, you just have, like I say, it's just difficult to navigate.
Right, because we're certainly out of the mainstream. I think the other thing too is the sort of staying put. I can hear it as a conscious decision. I'm going to stay. That's what I'm going to do. I know as a younger person for myself, when I was clueless, I'll say it like that, I didn't know who I was, what I wanted. I moved to the world kind of somewhat oblivious, and I didn't understand where I fit and who I was. And so, over time, I became more self-aware, and I was able to then say, and then make some choices. But I think that staying put, at least for me as a younger person, didn't feel, I don't see it as a conscious, something I consciously chose. So.
I agree. We don't call it by name. We just kind of go along with the way it is. And I guess that's what's meant by Plato's statement, the unexamined life is not worth living. And the more we examine, the more we do put a name to it. Yeah.
So I recently moved to California 3 months ago, and it took me 17 to 20 years to figure this out, that I wanted to live here, and that journey brought me here.
Okay.
And I have felt the regret in the process of life, like had been mentioned, like of all those years I've spent trying to figure that out. And then from there, what happens how do we embrace all the piece of nostalgia when that creeps in and suddenly you romanticize something that was not good for you or healthy for you, but all the good parts of it make it like, oh, I missed that, or I wish I had that right now. So what do you do in that regard?
I can let myself feel the nostalgia, which is a sweet style of grief. I can let myself feel the nostalgia and enjoy it, and then come back to what I'm doing. it's not yanking me back. It's simply something I recall and appreciate the good feelings of. And we all have this experience. And yeah, you can't go home again. Yes?
Well, it's me again, Tom. So I relate to our sensitivity to others that we care about when we go through important changes in our life. And for me, and maybe for others who have accepted themselves as gay, and it took them a while, I have children, and it has created some distance at times, some estrangement from them. And that's very sad for me, which doesn't make it less important for me or less joyful for me to be who I am. But their ability to accept that, or to just as completely accept me in their lives, that's compromised for them at this point. So, and I don't think I'm alone in that, and it might not be us gay people as fathers, but just as brothers and sisters and uncles and whatever, aunts.
Well, thank you for being so candid about that. And yeah, I'm sure other people can relate to it. How much time do I have left?
We're at 11:40, so another 15 minutes.
Okay. Other ideas?
Actually, I saw my father postpone his death until my mother could get a little more ready. And I think this, we're always, we can't separate ourselves from our worlds completely, even though the changes is huge. I find that very moving.
Maybe a follow-up comment to what also maybe what I heard, how I heard Leandro ask this question is, his change, his movement, etc., didn't necessarily cause the pain and the people around him, but like he sees people stuck, or at least I've seen this, we see friends stuck in a situation, it seems like it, and you're like, there's this impatience, like, come on, like from what I see it, it's very clear, you just need to do A, B, and C.
Yes.
And
yeah. Actually, the change in this situation caused some pain because my family wants me to be there inside the closet, doing the things that I used to do in a space that it doesn't fit me anymore. So there was no pain in terms of, okay, I'm hurting anyone, I'm just not there anymore. So the needs or the things that they want me, I can do in a different way, but they still in the same space and time, like 20 years ago. It's like the same dynamic that at this point I don't think is gonna ever change. And I accept that, but they are suffering a lot. So my thing is like, okay, the duty of, okay, I'm not there anymore. And I don't know, there's not much I can do because they are not my choices. And I understand. Also, in terms of mine, I can understand everything. I can whiteboard and but it's just something more.
But it sounds like you're
of feeling guilty for something.
What? It sounds like you're working your way through it somehow, right?
Yeah, every day. For the last 30.
It's a long process.
You remind me with my family. I got into the structure when I came out because they're fundamentalist Christian, and I got attached to this that I need them to accept me. And I got attached to that concept, and it took me till last year to get to a point where I just said, I am who I am, they are who they are. And they finally, after that, said, we accept you. It was hilarious. It was like I got there, and then they were there.
Good. Well, that's a very good conversation, right? Like, I know I'm not the person you wish me to be, but you are not the person I wanted to be. I told that to my mom. I know I'm not the son you wish me to be, but you are not the mom of my dreams. So. She was speechless for with the realization that I'm probably. And she kind of agreed. She could not reply.
Well, your mentioning religion reminded me of how that also could be part of our topic, that some of us were, for many years, in religions, especially from our childhood, that contradicted even who we were. I'm thinking of another poem, also by Emily Dickinson. Let's see, just a few words we might not know. The second word is spelled C-E-D-E-D. Ceded, as in handing over territory. I'm seated, she says, my religion has given me back to myself. Because she abandoned her Protestant religion. Diadem means crown, and string of spools refers to an old custom, kind of ended at the time of my childhood. During the year, your mother or grandmother would give you empty wooden spools after they use up all the thread. And the spool has a hole in it so that it can be placed on a sewing machine. At Christmas time, you paint these spools in all different colors and designs, and then you string them together and put them on the Christmas tree. I'm seated. I've stopped being theirs. The name they dropped upon my head with water in the country church is finished using now. And you can put it with my dolls, my childhood, and the string of spools I've finished threading too. Baptized before without the choice, but this time consciously of grace, unto supremest name, call to my full, the crescent dropped, existence's whole arc filled up with one small diadem. My second rank, too small the first, crowned, crowing on my father's breast, a half unconscious queen. But this time, adequate, erect, with will to choose and to reject, and I choose just a crown. Isn't that beautiful? She says it all. So that would be an example of what you sound like when you decide, hey, wait a minute, this whole structure doesn't quite fit me anymore. So I'm going to have my own ritual and enter a whole new belief system that fits better with who I am. What a wonderful option. So you go from crowing on your father's breast, depending on her own father and God the Father, to adequate, erect, will to choose and to reject. Yeah.
Well, Emily Dickinson is just a wonderful example of somebody that stayed and yet changed. And I've never viewed her as being stuck, although people have described her that way. She spent most of her life in the same room. But it just reminds me that, especially more modern Americans, is that we often think that if something's wrong in our life, we need to change the circumstances of our lives rather than change internally. And we might do just the opposite of what some of your patients have done.
That's a very good point. It's not place-related necessarily. Like you could be in the same place and make all kinds of changes and move through many chapters. It's not like Dorothy going from Kansas to August in order to find herself. And by the way, thinking of Dorothy, that's another feature of this topic. You see, she Dorothy, knew that she had to leave, and so she ran away from home, the little basket and the dog. And she met up with the man who would be the wizard. He saw right away this little girl running away from home. So he showed her his crystal ball, and he showed her her aunt and said, "Your aunt needs you, so you have to go back home." So she did. She went back. She went back to where it isn't working. So that's the part of the story when you're not ready. But when she went back and found none of the farm hands or her aunts and uncles, since they were all hidden in the cellar, she went into her bedroom, and then a tornado came, picked her up, and threw her into her next chapter. So sometimes that's what happens. The universe comes along and forces you to go, as in her case, and then your whole new adventure begins. And you didn't make it happen, and you weren't even ready to go. So this is another feature of the mystery of timing. I mean, I have to wait until the time is right. It's not the final statement. Sometimes you're going to go when the time isn't right, as far as you're concerned, as in her case. And then when you get to the new chapter, you could also mistake the purpose, your own purpose, because when she got to the next place, she thought, my purpose is to get back home to Kansas. So the adventure continues, as you know. Then we have the final scene. We have the balloon with the wizard. He's going to take her back to Kansas, which is the fulfillment of her stated purpose. But, as Jung says, when you become truly spiritual, an animal will help you. So she gets into the balloon, dirigible, whatever you call it, and the little dog jumps out. This means she has to get out, go back and get the dog. The dog is so important. And when she gets out, the balloon takes off on its own because the wizard has kind of bungled it. So now she's back in Oz, kind of, it seems, permanently. Then the scarecrow says, "Oh, Dorothy, you can stay here with us. We love you." And she's still sad. The scarecrow says, "But look, here's someone who can help us." That's when the good witch appears. She says, "Oh, you've always had the ability to go back home. You just had to click your heels together and say there's no place like home." And the scarecrow says, "Well, then why didn't you tell her that to begin with?" Instead of, the yellow brick road and all that. And the witch says, "Because she had to learn on her own." So you hear all the references to timing? She had to learn on her own. Then she realizes that, the purpose of this whole thing was not to get back to Kansas. The purpose was to find my own power. So sometimes we think that our purpose is, I want to have a nice relationship so I can be happy. But actually something bigger is afoot, such as I need to find my own power and learn how to love myself while also being able to love someone else. So this is another feature of our topic. See how vast it is? And it's just so essential to get it that that the time that we have this time so that all this can happen for us. The most common word in Shakespeare is time. So I'll end with one final quote from Shakespeare which just comes to mind. And this is from The Tempest. And he's finally pointing out what he himself believed in, that the timing also depends upon the astrological chart, that you can only go or do or be when the stars are lined up the way they're supposed to be. I find my zenith doth depend upon a most auspicious star, which if I court not, but omit, my fortunes will ever after droop. Thank you all.
We have a host. Here.
Yes, I am your host today. There's some snacks out there. There's hot water for tea. When you're finished with your cup, either put it in the sink or in the dishwasher. At 12:30, people gather at the door to go to lunch. Everyone is welcome. There's a sign-up list if you'd like to be on the GBF directory on the credenza. And I'll be coming around with a Donna Bowl. Donna is a Pali word for giving. And we appreciate $10 to $20 contribution. And with those contributions, we pay the speakers, we do the Larkin Street dinner, we send like 300 newsletters a quarter to prisoners, and then rent. So if you'd be generous, that would be great.
Anybody else? Tim?
Yes. Having seen some friends badly damaged by scams, fraud, sometimes with inside a relationship, Tom Amiano and I have organized a workshop on elder abuse in the LGBT community. It's going to take place March 5th at the LGBT Center. It's going to be a half-day set of presentations, a lot of interactive activities, lawyers involved. A lesbian friend who's former director of the National Center on Elder Abuse is going to sort of lead and facilitate the morning. There'll be people from the DA's office, other support services, a lot about prevention. So we're trying to empower our community to recognize the danger signs and to know how to do something about it before it happens.
Will you put an announcement on the listserv?
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you. That sounds. What is the most common type of? Is it financial?
It's financial, but there's also physical. There are sweetheart scams. Often it can be more prevalent in our community sometimes because we are more separated from family and often isolated, and so a lot of legal things to do to prevent and head those things on. I've learned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'll just make a quick announcement. I think most people here probably know who the Billies are, and their next gathering, which is called Snuggles and Cuddles, the deadline to register for that is today.
Got good? No? No? All right, great. Let's stand up for the dedication.
By the power of this and of all our practices, may we greet the all-illuminating dawn of love and wisdom, and may we always be loyal to those who are still lost in the ever-darkening sunset of fear and craving.
you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.